Hey guys, it's Yodajoe 93.
And Disney Fanatic.
So we'll be doing more collab crossovers since we are a couple. I want to make an announcement for you guys, and we'll make the announcement in the beginning of this video for you. Moving forward now, Yodajoe and Elevation Gaming will be joining forces on more occasions than often. Sometimes she's on video, sometimes she's off, but she's going to be on every video that we have a topic that we're interested in talking about together. We're going to try and get her on more videos because one, it will help her YouTube channel grow, and also, I just love this woman with all my heart so much, and I want her by my side. And one of the things that she loves more than anything, well, not more than me, but a thing that she loves similar to me is our friend Pixar Expert. You know, he's always doing his big marathons for the Lord of the Rings. We've only gotten through one of the extended editions of the Lord of the Rings. We've seen them all. We know them. We just have to refresh our memory. But what we recently rewatched after years of them being in theaters is we watched the Hobbit trilogy. And we'll eventually be doing all of Middle-earth ranked. But for now, we're just going to do the Hobbit movies. And keep in mind, our ranking of the Hobbit movies are based on our love for Peter Jackson's vision and Lord of the Rings. And I recently found out, because of a stream from Star Wars Theory and his Lord of the Rings guy, did you know Peter Jackson only came to do the Hobbit movies because the people working on it, the MGM studios and the different studios that combined for it, were saying if a good, competent director didn't come and direct the movies, that they were gonna scrap the movie and fire all of his employees and friends.
Yikes.
He didn't even want to go back because of the backlash to Middle Earth, and he felt done with his 3 Lord of the Rings movies. And they're like, oh,
so sad. But yeah.
So that's kind of unfortunate. But now we're here to talk about the Hobbit trilogy. Now, as we do with our trilogy rankings many times, this will be ranked from the worst to best. And before, I'm going to remind you, because we live in a world where people get upset about opinion, this is just our list. Doesn't mean it's the right list, but it is our list.
Exactly.
And I'd love to know yours in the comments. If you have a different list than us, please let us know. We'd love to have a conversation about, we might not agree with your thing, but we're interested to hear, maybe you'll have a different perspective than what we do. We have our reasons for our list and why they're at this part, but also we understand your reasons as well. So, coming in at number 3 on the list, we have The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Now, this is the first movie in the trilogy, so in theory, people love origin stories. It should be the best in the trilogy. But unfortunately, from my perspective, as a first movie, it has some glaring issues that unfortunately it suffers from too much origin. But when it's telling an origin, it doesn't follow in the footsteps of Fellowship of the Ring, where it's a great returning story and setting up the sequels. It sets up the sequels on this path and this journey, but it doesn't really get to its point too much in the movie. They do a lot of meandering and we're going on this journey, but there's a lot of in-between stuff happening that's not needed. We spend a little bit more time, too much time in the Shire for me personally to be desired. I think there's a lot of random stuff with Bilbo that just isn't needed. And we don't need to know about his connection with we already know kind of how he feels about the Hobbits and the Lord of the Rings. It really isn't needed.
I know. For me, the first movie, it's also number 3. The reason why, for me, is because, like he said, they go on and on about just Bilbo, and for me, it blends in with the other movies. Is it, I can't remember, is the troll thing part of the first movie?
Yeah,
okay.
The troll. The cooking them, doing all that, and they eat the horses and whatever.
Now, I did like that part because it does kind of coincide with Lord of the Rings itself. The first Fellowship of the Ring movie, you can hear Bilbo say, they was gonna squash us in the jelly. And it just reminded me of that connection, and I thought that was a really cool Easter egg.
I do like the callbacks, don't get me wrong. I do think the callbacks are really nice, and they have a nice ring to it, and they're very well handled, in my opinion. I think they're very well made, and they've done justice for sure. I just feel that some of the stuff is just a bit meandering. Some of the stuff with Bilbo and Gollum is really good, but we don't get enough of it. And it's just kind of they play it for comedy. Radagast is good, but they play him for comedy. I like that they set up this shadowy stuff, but like in the background they have the whole thing where with the orcs. So like, also I wish they would establish in the first movie they kind of like they paint Azog as the main threat of this movie, but then he doesn't come in until later in the movie, and like they don't establish until the second movie, which we'll talk about why that's the best movie later. But they don't establish that he's connected to Sauron right away. And I just feel like that's kind of a missed opportunity.
Yeah,
because
it causes confusion.
Because if you remember, and even though at this point he's not in league with him, how confusing would it have been if, when we got to Fellowship of the Ring, if they didn't tell us that Saruman was working with Sauron and he was just kind of doing his own thing. They both had orcs. Yeah. Like, that would have been so confusing. So, to me, I just feel like that's, like, there's some good action scenes in here. One thing, I didn't want to be this guy because I know we're living in a world where we get so much new effects, though. I will say some of the CGI in this movie is a bit dated. Like, for the first movie, some of the times, like, not the trolls, but the sequence with the Goblin King. The Goblin King was fun, but some of the stuff is a bit, I don't know. And I think they could have polished Gollum a bit. You look at Gollum in Lord of the Rings, you look at Gollum in The Hobbit, I think they could have polished his effects better.
True.
I mean, Andy Serkis still does good. I think one of the biggest wasted opportunities for me is, I love the music in this movie. I love the Misty Mountains theme. I think that's great. I wish they do it better. They do it better in Desolation and Smog, where they explain the background story. But I wish we would have really got to know more about Thorin's lineage in the first movie. Because Thorin is the Aragorn of this movie. He needed more screen time. They bring him in, and like he's brought in to go on the mission and to set up being king of Erebor. But that's his only thing. And so they draw him in the similar comparison to Aragorn, where he shows up on the quest and he's leading the quest. But the difference is, we know Aragorn from the beginning is a reluctant king, where Thorin, he wants to be king.
Yeah.
And that's great, but explain, like, we get the little cutscene in the battle, but like, why do all these dwarves trust him so much? Why is he doing what he's doing? And and some of like the Radagast stuff, like I love Radagast, but like some of the jokes they're making with the other wizards, I like seeing Saruman actually like contributing to have like the conversation. I love the conversation between Elrond and him in Rivendell. I love all of them just being like, oh yeah, no, he's not back. But even Galadriel and Gandalf are looking at them like, you guys are crazy. And also, I don't know if you realize this, but I didn't think of it because I know a lot of people would want to decanonize this show. There's kind of a big Rings of Power Easter egg in that scene, where the look that Galadriel and Gandalf give. I wonder if Galadriel told, since they kind of had a thing, I wonder if she told Gandalf about the experience, because she's the only person, if we take Rings of Power as canon, which it is, she's the only person that really knew Sauron. True. Like, really knew Sauron before he became this horrible tyrant, like, horrible. Very true. So I'd love to see that kind of... We need a Galadriel movie. Like, I know they did, like, Hobbit, but, like, if Peter Jackson comes back and they make, or other directors do things... One video I want to do after we do all these videos is there's a lot of new stuff happening with a potential new trilogy of Lord of the Rings movies with Max. And they're talking about where Peter Jackson might not return, but he might. And then there's also talks, like, apparently, so people are getting worried. So they're saying it's going to be Lord of the Rings movies, but how is it going to be, like, how is this Middle-earth movie going to be done? Because there's books for The Hobbit, there's books for things. Apparently, this is going to be 3 individual, trilogy-orientated movies. So it'll be 3 individual movies, but they'll be connected in the sense that they're in Middle-earth, but those will be 3 separate stories. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that. And that's kind of how the video games Shadow of Mordor and what's it called? War of Shadows or Shadow of War. So if you haven't played those games, that's pretty great, which we'll get into. But let's get back into the reviews. So the first movie, so we're going to score each of these, and then we'll move forward to our next one. But so I'm going to give this one the weakest score of them. I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10. I think there are some good things. I like some of the scenes with Gandalf. I wish Gandalf was in it more. I like how he convinces Bilbo to kind of finally join the quest. Some of the stuff with that setup is good. I know this is crazy, but I kind of was hoping for more of a, when the dwarfs show up, I kind of wanted more of a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs approach. Like, I kind of wanted to see them working in the mine before they go over to Bilbo's house. I think the fact that they just go to Bilbo's house and, like, all of a sudden Gandalf ropes them in on the quest because it's for Aragorn is a little too soon. And I'd like to see, like, where are the dwarves when they're kicked out of their home? They're kicked out of their home. Then they just showed up at Bilbo's house.
Yeah.
Where were they living? Like, that seems like something. I know it's a plot. I know I'm probably just nitpicking for the sake of nitpicking, but it seems like that was important. Their location.
Yeah.
The tease of Smaug at the end is good. Like I said, a lot of the action is good. One thing I don't really understand anymore, and maybe someone can explain this if they've looked into more the deeper lore of the Hobbit movies. I know more about Lord of the Rings than I do the Hobbit movies. Why was Thorin scared of Azog at the end with the fire? When we see when we find that Azog's alive, he's so hellbent on killing him as we move into the final two movies. But do you notice he's scared of him? Like when maybe it was the fire that was more scared of, but like when they're fighting like in the tree and they have this like little showdown, Thorin kicks the shit out of him in the prologue of that movie. When they have their rematch, Azog wins because Thorin has fear.
True.
But why would you have fear of someone that you've already known you can beat? I don't care if he has a shiny metal arm or whatever he's got. He can beat him. We've seen it.
Might have just been the situation he was in, because like being on that tree.
True. Yeah, maybe that was terrifying for him. That's true.
Especially if you're a dwarf, you're like really short, and you're how high off the ground?
Yeah.
He could have plummeted him.
Another thing I think that's kind of sad is like I don't know if you ever saw the animated like Hobbit movie that was based off these live action ones, but like the Hobbit was intended as its book as like it was the Lord of the Rings for children. So it was meant to be like there was a Hobbit video game where it was Bilbo just kind of exploring little areas. There's a lot of creatures, and there's wolves and things and like and the dragon and stuff. But like I feel like these three Lord of the Rings movies, or these three prequels to Lord of the Rings, they only the second two they end up diving in more into the creatures of Middle Earth, but this first one, I feel like it doesn't feel very like there's not as much expanding the world as it would see. For a movie called Unexpected Journey, the journey isn't shown as much. So yeah, I'd say 6.5 out of 10 for me. So that's where we at for the weakest on the list. Do you have final thoughts on this? Anything else you want to add to what I said for this one?
I would have given it a 7, just because I like the Goblin King. Whenever I was younger and I started watching it, that was one of my favorite parts.
You know, I like that part of the movie. I didn't give it the 6 out of 10 because of the Goblin King. I gave it the 6.5 out of 10 because of my other glaring issues with it. Yeah. I thought that sequence is fantastic. Everyone in battle, and I love. My favorite scene in the movie is just seeing all the lore behind finding out about Bilbo learning about getting his sword. The lore behind Gandalf learning about the foe hammer, which is used to kill different people. Yeah. And then Thorin's sword / Legolas' sword, which we'll talk about in the next two movies. I love that. I love the lore behind that.
Yeah, I would have just given it a 7 instead of a 6.5. But
the reason I'm giving it a 7, I'm giving this one a 6. I don't want any of my movies to have any rankings that are close to each other, because then it will kind of say then it says that Battle of Five Armies is this much better than this, but it's not that much of a difference, right?
True.
So if you had a 7 and a 7.5, why does this one get the 5 and why does this one get the 7? They need to be on a different scale. So
I guess that, yeah.
Because like, even though I like, or you're going to see when we talk about this next movie, even though there's a lot of things I like, it's hard for me to give it an 8 and to give it on rewatch because it's not quite great. It's good, but it's not quite that great level. All right, so let's move into our runner-up / the second weakest. But since there's only 3 movies, technically, if you look at the list, technically, you have, this is the second best movie, but it's also, if you look at it from when we get to the Lord of the Rings rankings in another day, you'll see why this one might be a little lower compared to all Middle-earth films. But for this trilogy, this is the second best one. So now we're getting into our runner-up. So what is the second best movie in this trilogy? So now some people would think, because if you look at the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it goes Fellowship, good. Two Towers, great. And then it goes Return of the King, whether it's theatrical or extended. That's an example of where the third movie is better than the first 2 movies. Because it comes together so nicely. Where here it's the middle movie, as we'll discuss, is stronger. So here with this one, Battle of the Five Armies, which was originally going to be there and back again through different changes with Peter Jackson and a bunch of different issues. This is the third and the conclusion to the Hobbit trilogy. With this movie, a lot of things I love. So we're gonna do this like they do in Sean Chandler's video. I didn't have too much notes on the last one we just talked about, because there's not a lot that because there's not that journey, there's not a lot that happens. So we're gonna kind of cover the good things first, and then we're gonna cover the kind of issues I have, and then you'll talk about your issues.
Sounds good.
All right. So the good here, the opening scene where we see, because we learned in the second movie, which we'll talk about this in the second movie as well. Gandalf is going, and he is literally doing his thing, and he's going and he does what's it called? Gandalf goes and he's trapped, right? So he calls out to Galadriel, and Galadriel goes and she literally calls upon using her dark forces, using all her energy, and there's orcs, but then the cage opens up, and then Elrond, Galadriel, and Saruman, which is funny to me because I guess timeline-wise I forget what year it was, but I guess Christopher Lee is still alive at this time when this movie came out. But seeing all the wizards, which we've never seen before, endgame level kicking ass against actual ring rates in their normal ring rates forms before they become like the Black Riders.
Yep.
So to me, even though there's some cool action scenes later in the movie, this to me is the highlight of the movie. I think this is the best scene in the entire movie. Even though there's other good scenes later in the movie that I still think are good, this to me is something I've wanted from this entire franchise that I never thought we'd see. So I love this scene. And Galadriel kind of, I get my Star Wars fetish a little fixed because I get to see Galadriel kind of balance between, because in Lord of the Rings she kind of has her moments where she's sometimes darker than sometimes light. So you get a little bit of that Anakin there.
Yep.
And I really like that. It makes Galadriel a much more interesting character. So I like that a lot. So I love that first scene. Love the showdown with the ring wraiths. So then we learn, this movie kind of pieces together. Another big strong suit is we talk about these movies are Desolation of Smaug happened right before this one. The damage from Desolation carries over right to this movie. And I love that there's no time. I love that we start this movie and Lake Town's in ruin, and it's up to Bard to defeat Smaug.
Yeah.
And now, from what I remember in the book, they could have adapted this scene a little better, but I think it was still pretty good. And this whole movie has both these next two movies. One thing I'm going to say that I never thought I would say, when you look at Bard the Bowman, he's not a main Middle-earth character like that people should know by legacy or know, he's mostly just specific to the Hobbit storyline. But Luke Evans, who's an incredible actor who played Gaston in the live-action Beauty and the Beast movie, he's also known for a couple other big roles. A lot of people know him for, if you watch the Fast and the Furious movies, he was Jason Statham's big bad brother. So they were kind of a team, so it's kind of cool. And there's other things that you go on, but so I love this character of Bard because it's just a normal kind of a father trying to take care of his children. And I thought that was a unique thing to see in Middle-earth that we hadn't seen. And the whole town turned against him because they believed his ancestor failed them and I like that. I like that heritage. I think it's rich.
Yeah.
So I like this. One thing I'll say it's kind of sad is, even though we got a whole movie with him, I think it's kind of sad that they made Smaug get taken out right away in the beginning. Because the only dragon in Middle-earth, we only get to see him cause a little bit of destruction.
Yeah.
And it's so that's kind of it's not an issue to take enough points off, but it's something I wish we got more of. I wish there was a Smaug cut, like an actual longer version of some of his scenes.
Yeah.
Because Benedict Cumberbatch did that so brilliantly, I felt.
I agree.
So they defeat the dragon, and then all the dwarfs go in to claim Erebor. But of course, the first thing Thorin does is goes and looks for the Arkenstone and claims the treasure. But as he's on the treasure, he achieves the great sickness that he was warned about from his grandfather and many other people.
Dragon sickness.
Yep, dragon sickness. So that dragon had been laying on that treasure for so long, he had basically caused this massive sickness to anyone that was near the treasure.
It was a dragon curse.
And so one thing I'll say is, I remember when I did my previous review before I had a YouTube channel for this, and I did like my little like live TV show. So you guys might not know this. I can't remember what the actor's name is, but I fucking love Thorne's actor in this movie because I have some issues with him, which we're gonna get to in a minute. Like I don't like his 180 switch, which we're gonna get to in a minute. But I love when the actor that plays Thorne, he's on this other animated show of this video game called Castlevania. It's on Netflix, where he voices the lead character. He has this really great like voice for these type of like what would you call them? Not Middle Earth, medieval characters. And so he's got this really rich and demanding voice. And seeing how the dragon sickness affected him in his acting, he's normally a dude with a very loud voice, and like seeing him, even though I feel for Bilbo and all the family, I like seeing him acting like a dragon and getting mad and kind of being like, pretty dope. Like that was just something. As an actor, he gives a worthy performance of that. Definitely. Now, my issue with it is that because we have to go to this final battle and we got to have that Aragorn Blackgate type moment, we have to go from, I'm sorry, I'm ready to break the sickness, to like, I wish they would have explained the break from and I wish he would have snapped out of the dragon sickness sooner. Like, I wish Bilbo would have been able to, like, we needed more time. They needed...
Or at least have moments where he's in and out.
Well, you know what they could do?
He was constant through it all.
This is one of the issues I have with, I love when you write complex characters, but they have to do it right. So, like, I think, like, I love Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars, but they didn't flesh out his confliction until they did the Clone Wars animated series. So the movies didn't always capture the best image of that. Yeah. But one thing, even though I don't like the sequel trilogy and I don't like the movies, one thing I'll say with Star Wars is, one thing I can give the sequel trilogy is, well, Hayden Christensen, I think, is still a much stronger actor than Adam Driver. I think Adam Driver is a great actor, right? But in terms of the Star Wars gods and the lore of how they act, Adam Driver was playing, if Anakin was better written, he was playing, as Kylo Ren, a better Anakin, because you're getting a 2.0 kind of, like, perspective of confliction. Yeah. Now, the problem is, and we'll talk about this in my other video I'm going to do later tonight about about how he, what he was going to do in the original script of Jedi, but just basically, the main thing is conflicted characters. We need to have them be conflicted and show how they get tempted and how they get broken out of their thing. So one of the things that I've always wanted to talk about, so I've been working on a video for a while, and maybe I'll drop it tonight. It's been on my list for a while. Someone made a post the other day about, basically it was, since I'm such a big Star Wars fan, they were posting on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, and this is just a sidebar for a minute. We'll get back to the main topic, guys, but this is kind of related to this. And so they asked the question, what's your favorite, you can pick, I think it was 3 or 4 main media for Star Wars, right? And it's all canon or just things you enjoy in Star Wars. So it was pick a book, pick a movie, pick a show, and then a video game. And so I've been thinking a long time about what that would look like. So I have some thoughts I wanted to just sidebar with you guys about, which is kind of cool. And so I saw that. So as we move forward, so confliction is important. It's very important. I also love that one of the dwarfs in this movie, Thorin's cousin, is played by the guy from Brave, who plays Brave's main character's dad. That was hilarious. It was great to see that. And he fit being in another major warrior role. I think he fit that well. And
then seeing that once the king passed away, he took the throne.
Yep. That was a nice little touch. I agree. I will say this, and I don't know if this is how it is in the books. I haven't read The Hobbit in a long time. I wish Thorin wouldn't have died. Yeah. We didn't have enough time with him as a good king. Like I don't know if they'll ever do this like with Lord of the Rings, moving forward, like with these individual storylines. And you'd have to convince Viggo Mortensen, who's older now, to come back, who played Aragorn. I would love it if they could do a movie, and maybe it's not them facing main threats, maybe it's just them in their kingdom, but after the end of Lord of the Rings. So much of the focus was everyone wins, and then they go, and then, the Hobbits and Gandalf, they all go off to the other world now that they've completed their mission. Yeah. But Aragorn is now the true king of Gondor, and he stays with Arwen. I want that movie. Give me a movie of what is it like for Aragorn to run, because his destiny is the thing he ran from for so long, but we never get to see him except for the moment when he sings and unites the people. I want to see what his reign as king was like. Was
that
he,
would be pretty
like,
cool.
Was he a cool king? Like, there was a video game a long time ago. I don't know if they still make it. We would have to get an older console to play it. There was a PS2 video game where it was animated style, and it was Aragorn, and like it was almost like a game where you switch between different characters, and like you would have like it was like the same style as the old Hobbit games, but it was for Aragorn, and you could tag along with different partners. So sometimes Legolas it was joined co-op. So sometimes Legolas would join in, and you'd go on Aragorn's adventure. So it was Aragorn's side of Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. Also, I still think, out of all the characters in Lord of the Rings that are going to spin off, they should definitely do individual Strider stories. I think Aragorn definitely needs more stories. But then it would just be if like, would Viggo Mortensen come back, or would they have to recast him? Like, because he's kind of been kind of iffy on like in Hollywood continuing on big roles. I still think, and I don't know if you thought about this, and maybe we'll do this in a video. If he was going to go into another big role after not being in Lord of the Rings, I think Viggo Mortensen might still be the perfect person to play the new Doctor Doom in the MCU. I think he has great energy for that, like that range. So if he would be up for it, I'd love to see it. And with I don't know if you know this, but with Lord of the Rings and Star Wars having such a rich history, I'd love to see Lord of the Rings and Marvel have some history together.
Yeah.
So overall, I think this movie. So we should look at this. So then we got this big things like we finally get to see. There's this big fight over. Everyone owes each other parts of the treasure because of their deal, and so then the even though there's barely any of these dwarves, they decide to basically go to war with the people of Lake Town. Because Thorin basically in this dragon sickness, he's greedy. He doesn't want to share his treasure with anyone, which it fits the narrative. I don't have an issue with it. It's a little silly, but I'll forgive it because he's not himself. Bilbo even says it himself. And a lot of the battle sequences when they're being attacked from all sides, even just the Lake Town people, the elves, everyone attacking each other, the combat in this section of the movie, really well done. And Legolas going on, I love the scene where Thendril, who was also in, we just saw him in Twilight as a guy, right? So Elf King. I love the scene where he's fighting
Garrett, right?
Yeah, where he's fighting all the orcs, and he's on the deer, and the deer crashes down, and he just slices all their heads off it.
Yeah.
Such a cool cinematic moment. It's also hilarious that we talked about connection with Lord of the Rings and Marvel. There is actually one connection. This actor, not only Garrett from Twilight, but he's also Ronan the Accuser from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there is some Marvel stuff connections. Oh, and actually, there's another one I just thought about. Two more. Benedict Cumberbatch, Doctor Strange.
True.
And he played Smaug. Another big connection that I also thought about.
True.
Andy Serkis was also in the MCU as well as Star Wars. And then Martin Freeman is the famous, who plays Bilbo, is the famous agent in Civil War who says to Zemo, toilet privileges twice a day. And he's like, if you step out of line, you deal with me. He gets his hands together and is like, please step out of line. So I mean, yeah, that's kind of cool that they could definitely do that stuff. But yeah, overall, so really good. There's battles in this movie. The final act of this movie has some great battles. But I feel like one of the issues this movie does is I feel like, I don't know if Peter Jackson wanted to do this or if it was people in the office that was kind of forcing his hand to do it. But somebody clearly looked at this movie and said, this has to be before Return of the King. But they saw Return of the King's epic scale and they went, we have to do that. And they just fail in comparison because the threat isn't just, like, Azog isn't up there like Sauron and his forces are in Return of the King. So, and that's what you see. Our foes aren't as formidable. Although I do love a lot of the stuff, like in Lake Town, like when they're trying to defend, shielding everyone, Bard doing everything they're doing. The whole thing. I can't think what the guy is, but what is it? Albert, the guy that's stealing from everyone and wants to be the coward or whatever.
I can't remember.
Yeah, so he was like the king's servant or whatever, and then he like ends up betraying everyone. Then tries to finally like actually ends up
becoming a trans.
Yeah, he's the type of character, and he's one of the reasons the score is so low for this movie. I know that there's some comedy bits with him. I cannot stand his character. I don't understand. I know they have those characters in Middle Earth and why they have them, but I don't understand why we needed his character. I don't know why they needed to tell that story. They should have cut his screen time a little bit because there's other characters that could have gotten a bit more attention. I feel.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like he's kind of weird and didn't work. So I love the battle. You know what's something interesting? I'll say this. As cool as it is, like seeing the dwarves come out of Erebor and the great moment and go and fight the armor and join up and have the awesome moments. I think the more personal final stand is more interesting. Like when they all go towards where Sauron's big forces are, and they find out about the second army, right? Mm-hmm. And they're on the ice battling it out. Such an emotional, because a lot of people don't know. I don't believe Tauriel was in the original Hobbit book. I believe they made her for the movies, because there was a decision about Legolas almost wasn't in the Hobbit, and then they're like, well, we got to pay Orlando Bloom more, and because of his connection with Tauriel, they wanted him to be there. And some people in Middle Earth actually aren't fans. Oh, I'm not going to put this edited in the thing with the intro today, because I don't think this will let me edit, so we're just going to release it just like this with the thumbnail, which is good. Because I think this video just needs to be as long as possible and doesn't need clips. That's fine. It's perfect. So, you and I are just going back and forth and having a great time, so it just works. So then you get, you move forward, and we go and have this amazing thing where, basically, so we move forward and we're going off, and Gandalf has this great line where, so first, Thorin comes to his senses, they see him, Thorin's riding the ram, which I think is so cool, and they're all going up to the mountain, and Gandalf looks at Bilbo and everyone, and they're like, oh, where's Thorin going? And he's like, oh, he's got Killy and like all his top soldiers. He's like, oh, he's taking all his top soldiers, and he's like, and Bilbo looks at Gandalf, he's like, where are you going? And Gandalf's smoking his pipe, and he's like, to cut the head off the snake. Yep. Because Azog was that head, and like, I'll say this, one of my biggest issues with this movie is, man, it sucks that whoever did the writing and the choreography for the final fight between Azog and Thorin, that fight was so hyped throughout the trilogy, and they just really let people down.
I know.
And the thing that really hurts for me is they got the guy that played fucking Deathstroke, still the best Deathstroke of Arrow of DC, anyone they've ever done, and to play this amazing badass orc, and he doesn't even get a proper showdown with Thorin. They're just like, basically it's a random game of, oh, it's King of the Hill, who can knock each other into the water first. Yeah. That's the final showdown between Thorin and, like, who wrote that and said that's a good idea? Like, I can think of 10 other battles. And that's one thing I'll say that's kind of sad about the Lord of the Rings trilogy is, because everything was so focused on Sauron as the main threat, Aragorn didn't have, like, a true one-on-one rival showdown with anyone. He just fought, like, many different people, but I wish, that's the one thing I like about Thor, is he had this rival, and this could have been like Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul, this could have been like, there's so many rivalries that this could have been compared to, and I think, as a fan of both characters, I was let down by that. Now, one of the cool things I like about this movie is, because we did put him in for these final two movies, the showdown with Legolas end up killing Azog's son. Like, we had a showdown in the second movie, which is great. We're here, they're fighting in the ice, and we see Legolas. We also get the age-old question. What happens when the iconic archer doesn't bring enough arrows to battle all Middle-earth? I love that they answer the question.
He grabs a bat.
Yeah, he grabs a bat, and he gets his two little swords and tries to stab him, and then he finally gets the sword. And I like how Thorin and Legolas gained respect, and they traded off the sword. So the clean-cut ending of moving in from this movie to leading in Lord of the Rings has some good moments, but I just feel like a lot of it is the best word to describe this movie is as a third movie to end this trilogy, the trilogy to start all trilogies. The best word to describe it is disappointment. And I think for me, everyone will have their reasons. Like, there's things I like, a lot of things. The story has some things I really enjoy. I think the thing I go back to is you're building up something. That Thorin and Azog thing, when we got to that moment, it just kills me. Yeah. Like, the emotion, I'll say this. One of the best things in this movie, and one of the worst things that I would like to see the story flourish more, is they set this relationship between Killy and Tauriel, and then they're just both Well, I guess she didn't die technically, but she wanted to die because of the pain of like. I do resonate with that. I do love that romance that they had. I just wish they would have lived.
Yeah.
I mean, I get why they killed all of them because it made amazing. And that's the other thing that sucks. We have real stakes for why Azog. We already know that Thorin wanted to kill Azog, and now you have real stakes for the two of them wanting to kill each other, and we still don't get an awesome battle. It's like, what? Just that's where I'm gonna have the weakest score for this movie because that fight needed to be good, and I get they were on the ice, but they could have done 1,000 things to make that fight better. It could have been so easy. I mean, we're in the place where everyone has awesome swords and like so many good choreographed sword fights. Right, just get the guy from the prequels for Star Wars, who's a literal swordsman, to come in and choreograph the sword fights and do it perfectly. It's like I don't know whoever was in charge of the choreography for this movie. And I know that this isn't martial arts, so like it's not like well, why does he have an opinion to judge the? I have studied swords all my life. And I know that there can be good choreography with swords. So I'm very picky of sword fights. Even before lightsabers were a thing to me, I was talking about swords were the greatest. Like, I mean, I would rather have a sword than... the two classes are split together, so I don't miss the first one. I can go to the second one. It won't be a problem. I'll just jump in late. So then literally, we have this thing happen where that they move forward and they go and so like just a lot of the things with this movie is disappointing. Like there's some things that get ended. We learned Bilbo's got the mithril, which is great, and I'm glad they gave the origin to that. I thought that was great. That's one thing I didn't say about the first movie. I did like that we were in Moria in the first movie. I will say that. I like that we explored a little bit of Moria.
So what would you give the ranking?
For this one? Mm-hmm. This one I'm going to go... I want to give the 5. Like, I want to give it's definitely in the 7s. I was trying to give it a 7.5 because it is the second best movie. But I got to give it the solid 7 because it's just inching out after average. It's... Mm-hmm. I gave the... See, even though Unexpected Journey has the 6.5, it's that 5 points lower than Battle of Five Armies. If it would have done a little bit better, it could have maybe beaten Five Armies. But yeah. But then Five Armies has some great things. But I think the thing that I just take the most points of like is it's the things we want in these movies. And for me, when I think of the iconic, like we think these iconic movies, these iconic franchises, you gotta have that rivalry. And throughout the trilogy, we built up these characters being enemies. And I've just been waiting for them to have this grand fight. And I started thinking in my head, this is Batman versus Joker, this is Spider-Man versus Green Goblin, this is like it should be awesome. And it's not awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think I'd give it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
Are you giving it a 7 or do you give it a different one?
That's definitely a good one.
I think it's fair. All right, so let's move on to our final thoughts. So yeah, we're now moving into the final movie in the trilogy. Now, I don't think this is a surprise. If anyone has seen all 3 movies, number 1 is The Desolation of Smaug. Now, where do I begin? I don't have a single flaw with this movie. This movie, just to tease this for you guys, and I don't know the exact ranking, I have to think about it once we watch all 3 Lord of the Rings movies, but I can tell you this much. As a Hobbit movie, this movie might be up there with the main 3 Lord of the Rings movies. Yeah. But I think it might be for me, if I think from just the theatrical versions and then now with the extended editions, I'm sure my ranking won't change that much. I think for me, my favorite Middle-earth movies, if I had to think, I think it's Return of the King as my number 1, Two Towers as my number 2, and then the thing I get tough was, do I like Fellowship more? Or do I like Desolation?
I think I would like Desolation of Smaug more than Fellowship.
Yeah, I think my thing is I have some classic nostalgia for Fellowship. True. Like a lot of the iconic scenes of Aragorn saving the hobbits from the Black Riders, iconic, and the final scene in the forest and all this stuff. And the extended edition, when I watched the extended edition when you went to work the other day, really opened up my eyes a bit more to things I didn't think about. But we'll see. Maybe it will change once I watch the whole trilogy again. We'll see. But yeah, so this one, Desolation of Smaug, we get introduced to Bard the Bowman. We go to Lake Town. Great Ed Sheeran song in this movie. So the first movie was great because you had... Oh, that's the thing we didn't talk about the last movie. So, cool thing for you guys. In the last movie, is it Merry or Pippin? I think it's Pippin. The actor that plays Merry or Pippin is a singer, and he has a nice song to close out the trilogy in the last movie that I thought was really good.
He's the same guy also that was in Lost. I don't know if you guys remember watching that, but
he also made his way into the sequel trilogy as a main character. Yeah, he was one of the members of the Resistance. It was pretty cool. So that was kind of a nice little trivia bit for you. So that was really cool. So I love that the music, like, you had Misty Mountains in the first movie. I used to always sing that on my iPod. Forever, the misty mountains deep, 3 caverns cold. So I used to always like that because I just kind of had like there's like acapella versions of that, and it's really beautiful to listen to.
It is.
So I really liked that. And then the second big thing is the movie. So then the second thing is in this second movie we had the amazing Ed Sheeran. If this is to end in fire, then we'll all burn together. Now why I appreciate this is because even though the song is played in the credits, the fact that they made a song out of Thorin's most iconic lines ever is amazing. Because literally what happens is they're fighting the dragon, and everyone's terrified they're going to get burned. And then Thorin's like, if this is to end in fire, then we will all burn together. Yep. It's so awesome. I just love that. So I thought that was great. This movie, number one thing this thing does, I already loved Legolas, and this movie found a way. This is where this is where I get to be me and not only talk about how awesome Legolas is as like an archer and stuff, but there's some moments in this movie because Legolas gets a couple fight scenes. Legolas, I don't know if Orlando Bloom had experience in this. We get to see Legolas show off some major mad martial arts skills in this movie, and I loved it. I loved it as a fan. I gotta say, and as a martial artist, I love that Legolas. The elves would be pretty agile though. I mean, they've been living for thousands of years. They would be that flexible and that skilled. They're already tall. I mean, it only makes sense. But I love that Legolas is just that badass. I think that's great. So I love him in this movie. When he takes the sword from Thorin, it's the ogre. Because we always know Legolas has always had his daggers. Seeing Legolas with an actual sword was very refreshing.
It was pretty cool.
And I loved how he used it against Azog's son. One of the best things about this movie is the twist of the necromancer being Sauron, which I think we all knew. And Gandalf going ham and having to battle everyone was kind of crazy. Yeah. But then him getting his ass kicked was just, wow. It gave me a little battery warning. But yeah, so his getting his ass kicked was just crazy. And how that goes about, how Radagast basically leads him to his doom. And the twist that Thorin's dad was still alive.
Yeah.
For that time. That I did not see coming when I first watched this.
I think that was part of the extended version too.
Oh, so that wasn't in the original cut? Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
Yep.
Okay, so that makes that me appreciate the extended version of this even more.
Yeah.
I love the scene where Thorin sits down with Gandalf, and Gandalf gives him the key and basically says, "Hey, it's your right to rule." I thought that was nice, and the fact that we're at the Prancing Pony, which sets up the continuity of Fellowship.
Yeah, I love all the tie-ins.
So I think that was great. With this movie, one of the biggest things you gotta do is with the last movie ending with seeing the dragon's eye open, we get so much of Smaug in this movie, and oh my gosh, even though it is a dragon made of motion capture and everything, Benedict Cumberbatch, you couldn't have picked a better person to voice this greedy dragon.
No.
And I used to always do a great Benedict Cumberbatch Smaug voice. I loved how he talked to the dragon. I remember I would come out of that movie, I would always quote to people, because I thought it was so badass, I would always say, "I am fire, I am death, my claws are swords, my tail is spear." Just how he said that was just so awesome. I just loved how he talked as that dragon. It was so crazy with him as that dragon that some people were debating before they cast Thanos in the MCU that they wanted Benedict Cumberbatch to play Doctor Strange and Thanos because they just thought his voice for Thanos was great. Even though he didn't have the physicality to pull off the actual look of him. But that's why they had effects for it and everything. So I love that this movie is centered around Smaug so much. Even though we don't get it till the third act, so much of him is in this movie, and it's so brilliant.
I love it.
And I also love another thing. We talk about tie-ins. I love the scene where the elves capture the dwarves in the forest, and one of the best tie-ins connections to Lord of the Rings ever is, I forget which dwarf it is, but one of the dwarfs is actually Gimli's father.
Yep.
And there's been this age-old tradition with the dwarfs that dwarf women also have beards.
Yeah.
And so
I forgot about that.
And so there's this scene where and they kind of did a little bit of Rings of Power, which I thought was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But so there's this thing where they actually go and like he holds up a little like talisman like picture, and then they take all their belongings.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, who is this ugly creature? It's like, that's my wife. And what about this halfling? That's my wee lad, Gimli. It was like, I thought that was brilliant. And also, I don't know if you've noticed this, but those spiders that were there, one of them was actually Shelob, the actual main spider in Return of the King. So I thought that was actually pretty nice, little connection there. So I love that. I love how that connects. I love all the stuff with that stuff, all the stuff that Gandalf does here, all the darker stuff, all the stuff in Lake Town is brilliant to me. I think some good comedy in here, good balance of comedy. And one thing I love in this movie is the 180 how Bard ends up helping Thorin get into Lake Town and do all this blessings, and then when he realizes who he is, when they go to I love that conversation. Luke Evans does such a good job. I love the conversation. You have no right to enter that mountain. And then Thorin looks at him and is like, I have the only right.
Yep.
like that is just brilliant. It's so good. And like Thorin feels bad that he brings all his teammates to their doom. Like you can tell it weighs heavy on his soul.
Oh yeah. But with that being said, like first movie, second movie, third movie, what are the full ratings?
Okay, so the first movie we did 6.5. So that was for the first movie, and that was our lowest ranking. The second one was Battle of Five Armies, which is the third movie, and that was making it the second runner-up. That got a 7. This one, with everything being said, as we are at 46 minutes, is going crazy, which I love. I'm going to give this one of my highest ratings I've given for most movies in a while. It's not quite a master, even though there's not flaws. It's hard to give it the full 10 when it's not Fellowship, it's not Return of the King, it's not Two Towers. So I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10, which is higher than the other two. See, I think that's a win that we should achieve.
That is very fair.
It's still the best Hobbit movie, and I think it's great. So if you enjoyed us doing more of these rankings, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And are you excited to see us do more couple videos? I would eventually like to turn this channel. Maybe what we'll do is we'll end Ella's channel and maybe do a linked, like I might still do individual content, but maybe what we'll do is instead of her doing her own thing, maybe we'll just get together. There's some YouTubers that do like couple reviews.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll change the title of our channel for the final time and make it a combination of like something that goes with our couple name and like couples something.
Yeah, totally.
Like Yoda.
Give us some ideas in the comments below.
What should be our couple YouTube name? Because I'm thinking of transforming it into a couple channel. And I'll still make individual content. You'll still see me, but it'll be like Yoda plus someone else. So Yoda plus Disney, Yoda plus like... I think it'd be funny because of their connection. And even though Jedi aren't supposed to have attachments, I think it'd be hilarious if it was Yoda and Yaddle movie reviews or something. Funny. Considering Yaddle and Yoda, you actually have the hair for Yaddle, and like it's pretty funny that I thought of that. So let me know what you guys think. Should we be Yoda and Yaddle movie reviews, or should we be something else? Let us know in the comments. And as always, let us know your rankings, and look forward to more content coming very soon. See you in the next video, guys.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Sometimes